Welcome back, Exes and T podcast fans. Hello, guys. It's Danny here, back at it again with yet another fantastic episode for you guys. And might I just say, like I try to do in every episode, just to show gratitude to everybody who has been so supportive of this journey, for everybody who's wanted to come and share your stories, for people who are just sending information, and the community that we have built. I'm really proud of it. I think that we have come together in such a positive way after experiencing some really traumatic things. So, thank you guys for being on this journey with us. Now, today, we will be talking about Amway. We will be talking about the different lines of affiliation, more specifically worldwide. However, I do have to say, not here to defame anybody. I'm not here to defame Amway, Worldwide Dream Builders, any of the various people that we'll be speaking about. My guest that I have today is here totally anonymously. And the thing is, you guys, is we're allowed to share our stories. They might not be the most favorable, but we're speaking on personal opinions that are based on our personal experiences. Like, these are things we really went through. So again, not here to defame Amway, Worldwide Dream Builders, or any of the various people that we're going to be speaking about today. Okay, so you guys, we have back with us today, we have Callie. If you guys don't remember, Callie was here before, and she had kind of ended her story with the how she had gotten out, what was the big catalyst for her getting out. I know that had to do with her roommate. And now there's so much more that she wants to talk about because Callie found a lot out after she left. So thank you so much for being with us, Callie.
Yeah, thank you, Danny, for having me again. I'm so happy to be here again and to talk about all the stuff that I found out after days and weeks and months of research. So thank you for having me again.
Of course, of course. And honestly, like, I didn't even know these things. So I'm really glad that you're here to share with us things that maybe some of us do know, maybe some of us don't know. But it's one thing that I feel like everybody was either asked a time or two, and it's the way that it was presented, and that is lawsuits. You guys, do you guys remember if you guys were in this type of an organization? I don't know if the different lines of affiliation presented it the same way, but they would always say, like, yes, there's one big lawsuit that determined that Amway was not a pyramid scheme, by the FTC. That's the lawsuit they're going to be talking about. And you guys, everywhere gets sued. Walmart, all your favorite grocery stores, everybody's getting sued, but you still go to the grocery store, right? So that's one thing. But you found out that there's much more than just that one lawsuit.
Yeah, definitely. So if you remember from the last time we talked, and if your audience remember from the last episode, that I did mention I lived in Utah, and that's where I was an IBO for 4 years. I lived in Utah for a total of 5 years. Out of that 5 years, I was in Amway and Worldwide for 4 of those 5 years. So, as you know, whenever we go out, we're supposed to drop messages, make people aware. In my line of sponsorship, it was called Empower, means what was it? Make people aware. Empower, make people aware. Oh, make people aware of what's available. Yeah, that was the acronym for it. So anyway, whenever I talk to strangers through basically the way we were trained, as you know, be nice and be relatable and just make friends and all of that. And every time I would speak to not necessarily an older person, but I would say somebody from their between their 30s and up, maybe 50s, they would tell me, "Oh, Amway got sued," and in my head, I always was told, "Yeah, that's the FTC case. Whatever happened in the 70s, we won the case, so blah blah blah. McDonald's got sued. You still go to McDonald's." But then after I left in when did I quit? In June of 2023 is when I actually walked away completely. I actually even left the country then, not just quit. So I was still hoping and wishing that Amway is a good company, and I started thinking, hey, because I'm still drinking the Kool-Aid that they fed me for 4 years. I started thinking, hey, why don't I start my own line of sponsorship and my own line of like training system and all of that? And I can do it. Like, I learned some good things and I can read books and I can go on like different YouTube podcasts and learn new things if I need to. So I started Googling stuff and I found out that in Utah, just alone, in 1995, there was a lawsuit and the whole case is abbreviated. It's called P&G lawsuit in Amway. That was in 1995. However, it was dismissed in 1997. And I was not able to find a lot of information about it, but that alone in Utah, 1995, it clicked for me. It's like, oh, that's what people were saying. It's not the thing that happened in the 70s. It happened in 1995 in Utah because I lived in Utah. But nobody dared to tell me any of my uplines or crossline told me anything about that. So I started digging more and I started researching more. And I found out in 2007 there was a lawsuit in California. In 2020 there was another lawsuit in California, and so on. And then I realized, because I started digging further and further, I realized that Jay Van Andel was actually sued by the Canadian government in 1979, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And like, people, please, like, you can look it up on Google to fact check the exact date, but just look up Jay Van Andel lawsuit by Canadian government. He was sued for I don't know how many millions of like Canadian dollars, because he literally was smuggling US goods, meaning Amway products, across the border to Canada without paying the custom dues and fees for it for several years. He was doing that for a total of like I forgot what I read, but literally he was literally smuggling the American goods to across the border to Canada without paying any of like the legal dues and like fees for transporting goods from a country to another. So
Right.
yeah, like, what the hell is that company doing? And I was, for 4 years, I was told from every single person that was in my line of sponsorship, and even like people from different line of sponsorships, this is the best company ever. If we weren't so good, we wouldn't last 60 years. If we weren't so good, then we wouldn't be donating stuff. If we weren't so good, then like we wouldn't be in different countries and like all that crap. And I'm like, no, you just basically are tricking people for years and years and years. And you basically pay your way up to the top. Because, again, and I'm sorry, I'm talking too much and I'm rambling, but this is like frustrating, because I found out that they have the bosses, they have people who are like in politics, like Betsy DeVos in Michigan. And before I lived in Utah, I used to live in Michigan. So Betsy DeVos is a very familiar name for me as like a former Michiganian. She was in politics and she was constantly going to the White House and donating stuff. And her and like other DeVosses, like other family members of the boss, they have close ties to the White House and they are constantly in the news for quote unquote donations. So yeah, they're not in trouble because they are quote unquote donating to the White House. So how is that a good company? Can you tell me?
Wow. Wow. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Like, this is so this guy was so he was also smuggling things. Like, that's like dark, right? So imagine we were talking about something other than Amway products, okay? Drugs, okay? And there's literally no difference to me. Smuggling Amway products, smuggling drugs. The dude was smuggling things. Like, can you just imagine like him walking through customs with just like some like SA8 or something? Like, I
Yeah,
can't
hey,
get
I'm
like,
just smuggling
that's
excess
crazy.
here, or the excess bars, or like the protein shake.
Right. and not paying customs. Like, sir, you're supposed to be one of the wealthiest people on the planet. You would think that he could spare some change to pay the customs fees. I remember you also talking to me before about the lawsuit in the 2007 lawsuit in Utah. Is that the one where, like, with, because I know it's with P&G, but it was like Amway representatives who were accusing P&G of being Satanists, so that way people would buy from Amway instead of P&G products. Is that the one?
Oh, yeah. So it's actually 1995. The 2007 was in California, but yeah, part of why it was dismissed in Utah. So again, it's 1995. P&G like sued Amway. They were former IBOs that sued Amway for basically like wasting their money and like not, it's not what it's advertised. They didn't get any money, and like all the stories that we know and we went through personally. On top of that, like those two people were suing Amway and Worldwide as well for being some kind of a Satanist group and like practicing like stuff about Satan and like whatever. And I did not find a lot of details about why it was dismissed, but I am sure with Amway's money and Amway's government affiliation, they were able to dismiss it based on the claims of like the being the Satanist group and whatever else. They got to basically dismiss all the facts about how people are losing money, how people are being manipulated, how people are being like basically just tricked, even though we're adults. But yeah, emotionally tricked. We are emotionally tricked to join this cult. And yeah, basically it was, even though it was dismissed, but the fact that I was able to find that somebody sued Amway for being involved in a Satanist group, that alone is questionable.
Yeah, I found this article. It's so that I think this is my confusion. This is where it said it was from 2007 is when it was published. It's an NBC News article talking about how Procter and Gamble, they won a jury award of $19.25 million that they filed a civil suit against 4 former Amway distributors who accused them of being Satanists. Like, they accused Procter and Gamble of being Satanists, and so it looks like they did win.
So I think okay, I did not see that. If the article
that's
is
okay.
in 2007, probably I didn't see that. But I was able to find out that the case from the 1995, it was dismissed by the court in 1997.
I wonder if they
Maybe it was
refiled
two
or
different.
something that happened.
Okay, that makes sense. Or maybe they went to the Supreme Court or something. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, because this says civil suit. I wonder if maybe the first lawsuit was not a civil suit. Maybe it was labeled differently. But either way, that's great news that maybe at one point it was dismissed, and then later on, here we are. That's exciting. I'll post this link when I post this episode. But it's a fascinating read. Like, think about it, you guys. They were accusing Procter and Gamble of being Satanists to get people to buy Amway products. That's on a whole different level of delusion. Like, they're like, that's such a fear-mongering thing too, because as we all know, all the different Amway lines of affiliation are very, very Christian. So imagine these people who are like, oh my gosh, I could not buy a Procter and Gamble product. That's Satanism. Which Procter and Gamble owns a lot of different prominent companies. So, I mean, a lot of things that they're walking into the grocery store, like, I can't touch that. That's Satan. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm laughing. Like, I guess maybe because it's 2025, it just feels like how stupid these representatives had to have been to be like, you know what? You know what's a good idea? Satan. Let's tell everybody that they're Satanists. I don't think that would fly today. Would you care if Procter and Gamble were Satanists?
In Utah, I think it would, because maybe you haven't been in that environment, but in Utah specifically, it's
Oh
like
yeah.
dominantly a Mormon church,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
they like to refer to themselves as the LDS church. Um, so there, in Utah specifically, it would fly today. In other states, maybe not.
It's fair. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. Utah. It's Utah. If you guys are from Utah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that I have a couple of Utah listeners. I know I have LDS listeners too. Listen, we are very diverse here, but it is a fact that a lot of Utah is very religious, and it could very well still be used as a fear mongering tactic. I love that, Callie. I love put add that perspective on there. So
Yeah.
when you saw these lawsuits, um, had you seen any of them while you were still involved, and what was your upline's response to bringing this information to them? Maybe not all of the lawsuits, but even just maybe one or two that you'd seen.
So when I started like making people aware and dropping the message, I was faced with, hey, this company got sued. And when I did bring it up to my upline and like talk about it, they did tell me about the thing that happened in the 70s, and based on that, the FTC passed the law of like how MLMs should behave, and like we basically put the standards out there. I did my own research because I'm a natural skeptic. And to be honest, I did not do days worth of research, nor weeks or months like I did now that I'm out and I have all the time in the world. I basically just did like probably a 20-minute research, and I picked a couple of articles that did actually talk about what happened in the 70s, and that confirmed what my upline said. So to me, like that was an honest thing. And yeah, what happened in the 70s, who cares what, like if like something bad happened in the 70s, we're at that time, it was like 2020. Who cares? Like, yeah, McDonald's got sued again. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and yeah, this reminds me of the last episode. You did ask me a question before um like before I joined, did I ever look up what Amway was? And I did look up things, and I did talk to you about it in the last episode, but I wanted to mention something that I did not mention last time. um when I looked up like what Amway was before I actually signed the documents and became an official IBO, I did find out some like groups of people who were basically very angry. It was like a what do you call it? Okay, it wasn't Reddit, but it was like some kind of a blog, like several of them. And the people that were writing their stories, to me, it was clearly out of anger. It was basically, I don't remember exactly the stories, but it was like five different ones that basically were complaining about, hey, I lost my money, they lied to me and whatever, without talking about details of like what happened. How did you lose money? Was it like actually, like, did somebody actually take your money, or was it just you had high hopes and you were shocked with reality? And because I have a business background in my family, my grandfather has his own business, and my dad has his own business. So I'm familiar with, in business, you do have to lose money. I am very familiar with that, even way before Amway. Um, so I like those basically just told me these are angry people who have never understood what a business is and don't know how to run a business. That's why when faced with hard reality of like, yeah, in business sometimes you have to lose money to make money, they're angry and they're like, oh, it never works. But now that I'm out and I understand exactly what these people were talking about, and I did come to like do the first episode with you, I basically realized that I'm sounding exactly like them. And that's why I'm coming here on a second time, because I want to set the record straight. Yes, we're all angry, we're all hurt. We have different stories, but basically it's the same like hurts. Or maybe I shouldn't say the same hurt, but it's a similar hurt. We've all been deceived, we've all been tricked, we've all been like emotionally and mentally abused severely. And some of us even have been physically abused because of what they teach the men and the women to do. And I'm sorry for anybody that has suffered through physical abuse or any other kind of abuse because of Amway and worldwide. But I'm here doing the second episode because I want to set the record straight. Even though we're angry and hurt, Amway is literally a bad company. And that's why I did months worth of research to find out all that crap legally. It's not just angry people who lost their money are complaining. No, Amway is, and worldwide along with it, because they know exactly what's happening behind the doors, yet nobody tells us about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think when everybody leaves at some point, because you had said this as well, where you kind of thought at the beginning, like, oh, maybe I could still run an Amway business, but do it ethically. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Like, Amway is also part of the problem. And a lot of what they're doing is not just, I mean, unethical. And because I have to say it, alleged, they're doing illegal things as well. And the even just their support for the tools business, because they know what's going on. I mean, obviously that's alleged, but I have a very very good suspicion that Amway knows exactly what's going on with the tools businesses, and they're not shutting them down. They're not reporting them. They are basking in the money that they are receiving as a result of the tools businesses. But it does take some time to really start to see that, because when we leave, there's still, I feel like some of us, I know not everybody, some people left and they were like, I am 1000% doing research. I was in a cult. And I know for me, even the word cult was so heavy, and it was doing research like, oh, okay. And even at the beginning of the podcast, if you guys go back to some of my older episodes, like 2 years ago, I would say, Amway is just the products. It's the tools business that's bad. And as you kind of start to see through progression, I don't say that anymore because I know Amway's part of the problem. But it does take looking it up. And also, I really like that you had said that you have this business background for your family, and it's like they're gaslighting you, and they're like, but what you know is wrong. And they do that to all of us, right? But it's like when you have that firsthand knowledge and information, I can't imagine how frustrating it is, because they're basically telling you, like, you see the sky is blue, but they're telling you it's green. No, it's blue. Actually, you're wrong. It's green.
Yeah, exactly. It's like being through a nightmare that repeats itself. And I like that nightmare repeated itself for me for 4 years. Some people that are still in it for years, like you had previously the Amway kid, I believe her name is, and her parents are still in after like 30 something years or like 40 something years. They're still in. So imagine how brainwashed they are. And
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm like, I felt bad for spending 4 years of my life and wasting it that way. But then when I hear some other stories, I'm like, hey, it's only 4 years. That's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 4 years for you is probably a long time. And I think that even people who were like, oh, I was in for a year, that year is still a very long time. Any amount of time in a cult like this is quite a bit. But yeah, it is very sobering when you start to see, like, oh, the anti-MLM kids' parents are still in. They're still pushing for the dream. They are still trying to go diamond 50 years later.
Yeah.
Wow. And just saying that, I'm telling you, it is very like, oh shit. And that's a lot of people, though. It's not just her parents. What's great is that we got her perspective, but she's far from the only person whose parent is still actively involved. In fact, his YouTube channel is called MLM is Fraud. His father is still actively involved as well in Australia. And his dad, I believe, has been in for, I think, over 20 years. But when he had heard about the anti MLM kid, her parents being in for 50 years, he's like, okay, my parents are not the longest people. But when you talk to somebody who's seen it firsthand, it definitely starts to get you to realize how this company gets people. And some people stay in it forever. Some people never wake up.
Yeah. And I think the people that never wake up, and this is totally my perspective. I'm not pushing my view on anybody else. It's just totally me here rambling. I think the people that never wake up is because they have been convinced so hard that they have nothing else other than this, other than Amway and Worldwide or like any other affiliation that has. Um, because one time I remember I was talking to my platinum that we called her Leah in my last episode. Before I actually walked out, um, it was my like 2 year mark in the business, and I was basically just telling my platinum she was at her parents' house because again I used to live at her parents' house and she used to basically visit her parents' house, and that's where I would have that one-on-one coaching with her because she was constantly there. So one time I was basically telling her, "Hey, I'm not seeing any results. Hey, like I'm basically emotionally like quote unquote not strong enough for this business and all of that because they convince you to talk to yourself down, and then they convince you that hey they're building you up, let your coach build you up. um I wanted to walk away and she told me basically like I can't I'm paraphrasing, she didn't say it exactly in this way but that's the gist of what she said. You basically can walk away, I can't stop you, but think about if not this then what. And at the time, because I was so in drinking that Kool-Aid and I was so emotionally and mentally abused and tricked and um, manipulated, I basically couldn't answer if not this then what. 2 years later after that conversation I found out that yeah there are a million other ways, not just the one. So bye, I don't even need your approval, I'm just gonna walk away. But yeah,
Right,
going back
right.
on the other like the main point is people who stay in for that long, like 50-year long, is because they have been convinced that they have nothing else to do or nothing better to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's such a great point. And it's I feel like the association sometimes is what really keeps us involved. That, I mean, not just are they constantly like bombarding us with toxic positivity and read your Kates, and if you're feeling depressed, just go out and build your business. But when you go to those functions and you feel like those are your real friends, like it's easier, I feel like, to stay involved. And even you, when you were, you said you lived with your one of your upline's parents, and seeing the way that she was behind closed doors, I really wish more people had an opportunity to see. I wish I had an opportunity to see just how bad my upline really were. And I feel like a lot of us never really will get to see that. So I think that unique perspective also adds a lot of credibility to not just your statements, but why these people can be so bad and why you left.
Yeah, exactly. I think I have a very unique perspective because I did get to see the happy couple behind the doors. Because she was constantly yelling at her husband when she was at her parents' house. She was constantly criticizing her husband. She was constantly like talking down to him. I remember one time she wanted to dye her hair pink, and then she did, and then later, like after a few months, she wanted to dye her hair blue. And for some reason, they were talking about it. Like her and her husband, they were talking about it, and he said, "Yeah, you should just change your color, like your hair color, if you want to blue." And she's like, "No, but I have to bleach it, like to take off the red or like the purple, and then or sorry, the red or the pink, and then add the blue." And he's like, "Why?" And she was like, "Yeah, it's gonna be purple because coloring and like all of that, the color theory." And then when she was telling me that story, I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be blue. It's gonna be purple. And she was like, she literally, I can never forget that line that she said to her husband. She said, Callie knows that. She literally said, Callie knows that. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, how the hell do you talk to your husband that way when on stage you're saying that he is the king and he is like basically you're worshiping him on stage and in front of the camera? How the hell do you talk to your husband that way? And
Crazy.
that's just one situation out of many, like around 2 years that I got to live with her parents. So imagine how horrible she is, like when the whole team is not around.
Right. Right, exactly. I mean, that's even a very um probably a still modified version of her. Like if you weren't there, I could imagine, obviously I don't know, but I could imagine it could have even been a lot worse.
You know what? You just reminded me of one time we during COVID when we were still in lockdown. We had a training on live on Zoom, and it was just the husband. She was somewhere not in camera, but we could hear her like correcting him because she often corrected her husband or like always chimed in to add something. And then somehow like like her husband is talking and like we all just hear a loud scream in the background, and he laughs and he says, "That's Leah just yelling at the cat, it's okay, ignore it." And I'm like, okay, your animal can be frustrating. I've had a cat, I've been frustrated with my cat, I understand, but screaming at your cat like that, like, come on. And you're supposed to be this what was it, like a stoic person, and like all is good, and like kumbaya, and like all of that, and like I believe in God and I believe in like humanity, and like, excuse you, like, sorry, I'm just gonna cuss, fuck you. Like seriously, fuck you if that's how you behave behind closed doors.
Yep. Justified. If you're going to use one, this is a good one to use. Oh man, that's terrible though. Like, and these are supposed to be the people that are giving us life advice. This is supposed to be the person giving marital advice.
Yelling at a cat, not even another human being. And again, you should never yell at a human being. You should always talk in like a reasonable tone. But yelling at a cat, imagine how stupid that is. Imagine how childish and stupid she must be. And she's
Right.
like 20 something years old who is micromanaging my life because she is my upline. Imagine.
That's nuts. Like, oh my God. A cat. I I think I'm I say this, it's a joke. I feel like I'm nicer to my animals than I am my children. Like if my cat comes over and scares me, I'm like, oh, it's okay, buddy. My son, I'm like, oh my God. Like a little bit of a larger reaction. Although my kid did scare me and tell me there was a cockroach behind me and I like flipped out and it was very scary. Um, that was terrifying. But I just couldn't imagine like yelling at my animals. Like, I mean, obviously not my children, but my animals. Like, your animal didn't do anything to you. You're the one who, your animal quite literally like needs you to survive. You are their lifeline. You feed them. You are supposed to take care of them and love them. That makes me sad.
Yeah, and imagine now that same person, she is an actual mom with a human baby who is almost 2 years old.
No. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That makes me so sad, especially just bringing more kids into Amway too. That in itself is so frustrating to see because as of course, with the anti-MLM kid, we hear how traumatizing it was for her to grow up in Amway. And you think about the things that like they all say, oh, well, I trust my kids around everybody here. The things that people are saying in board plans, I would literally never want my child to hear. And speaking of things that people say in board plans, I feel like this is a fantastic transition because one thing that you would also mention, your response when you had heard some things that concerned you in an audio. Now, this is a time where you guys, I am going to say a name. Okay. We're talking about Michael Haddad. That is a person that I personally saw speak so many different times. He was, quote, what we call tap rooting into who would become my Eagles. And the thing is, like, this is the guy who, when my child went missing, I said, like, hey, Mike, my kid's missing. I need help. And he was like, he'll be fine, and just kept walking. This is in my personal opinion, a guy who is very pompous, and he is an asshole. But I think that what you have to say about the things that you heard in his speeches, totally valid.
Yeah, Michael Haddad is the Syrian guy that you always refer to on other episodes. It was around my year and a half, like year in the business, almost there. And his Emerald talk came out as an audio. And you know how we're always encouraged to listen to at least one audio a day. So it was one of the like recommended audios of that month. So because Michael Haddad, the last name, spoke out to me because, I'm from the Middle East. And that name is very familiar in the Middle East. It's kind of like saying John Smith, that's very English, very American. When you say Haddad, that's from the Middle East. So it was like, hey, there's a Middle Eastern person in Amway and worldwide. I have to listen to that. So I started listening to his Emerald talk. And he's giving an introduction about where he grew up and like how his life when he was a child and like how his mom due to like the immigration system at the time, his mom had to leave him and like his father to go to the US before them, and then like they started the process of immigration, and then he was reunited with his mom later and like all of that. When he started talking about his life in Syria, he was talking about like living basically in a dump where chickens are running around, where kids are not in school, where I don't remember exactly if he said something about like no hospitals. I don't like I don't remember that, but like I definitely remember the chickens running around and kids are not in school. And because I'm from the Middle East, because I grew up in Iraq, a neighboring country to the to Syria, it's kind of like saying USA and America, neighboring countries. So Syria and Iraq are neighboring countries, exactly like next door to each other. I am able to have a very similar background to what he's talking about. So when he's referring to a dump where chickens are running around and kids are not in school, from my experience, because we have a very similar culture and country, I can assure you that he's talking about a village, not the city. I'm a person from the city where we have schools, we don't have chickens running around, we do have paved streets. Oh, one thing that he did mention in that talk, no paved streets. And that pissed me off so much. And I'm sorry, I'm being loud and I'm like I'm frustrated. Every time it's been like 3.5 years since I heard that talk, but anytime I remember that, it frustrates me so much because it paints the Middle East in a bad way. I'm not saying those places don't exist, but if you listen to what was it? I think it's called The Dream. It's another podcast, or sorry, it's another like yeah, it's a podcast. Um, in one of the episodes, she like the lady who's presenting the podcast, she's talking about I believe it was Flint in Michigan. Yeah, Flint in Michigan. She's talking about basically like they have to burn the trash because the garbage man doesn't go around. Kids are not in school and like chickens are running around. That's in the United States, in Michigan, in the 90s, not in like 50s or not like 1840s or something. So even in the USA, you have those dumps. So yeah, of course, in the Middle East, we are gonna have dumps where chickens are running around. Sorry, chickens are running around, and like basically, it's a dump. Yeah, I am not ashamed to admit that, but that doesn't mean the whole country is like this. No, we have the city where city people do exist, and we have cars. We not just cars, we have modern cars, even like in the middle of the war that we're currently having in some parts of the Middle East. And I'm just gonna add here as an added note. The Middle East is 22 different countries. When we say the Middle East is a region, it's kind of like saying North America. For some reason, when I talk to some Americans, and forgive me, but I'm very like I don't know, bias, I guess, when it comes to like geography, especially in the part where I grew up in the Middle East. The Middle East is a region. It is 22 different countries. It's not one country. It's not like we don't live in a tent and we ride camels. That's just what you see in the news, you know. Literally, that's just what you see in the news, or like, sorry, that's what you see in the movies. And it's not just a war where like everything is being bombed. That's just what you see in the news. There are 22 different countries, and if there is one country that having a war at some point in time, the other 21 countries are still stable, you know. That's where I live right now. I have some friends who are like currently talking to me from the USA, and they're like, hey, how are you living, stay safe. And I'm like, yeah, I'm staying safe. There's nothing around in me where I live. It's in Palestine and Israel. That's like miles away from me. Seriously, that's miles away from me. That's a different country. Like, you know, I always tell like people specifically who live in Utah, because that's where I spent the last 5 years of my life. Imagine if there's like an earthquake or some kind of fire that happens in like California and you're in Utah. You wouldn't know about it unless you turn on the news. So I wouldn't know about a different country having a war unless I turn on the news. That's how it is, you know? So again, sorry I went on a tangent, but I'm very emotional about this. Going back to Michael Haddad, and till this day, he literally frustrates me. And when I was listening to the way he was talking about his life in Syria, in the Middle East, I kept repeating to myself as I was listening to him. I kept saying to myself, one day I'm going to be on stage, on a worldwide stage, and just correct the record, set the record straight. Because yeah, that might be his truth. Yes, that might be his life, but that's not what the Middle East, the whole 22 countries, are like. We're not a dump. We have a civilized nation. You know, we have like ancient history. Like we people have ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians. You know, Egyptianism is in the Middle East. It's not somewhere in Africa. Yes, it is an African country, but it is part of the Middle East. If you've ever read the Bible, or if you've ever read like just like ancient history, Babylon is in Iraq. That's where I live. You know, that's ancient history, thousands of years ago. And yeah, sorry, I went on a tangent, but he frustrates me. If I see him,
First.
if I see him face to face, I have never met him face to face. I wish I knew you when we were in the business, because I would have told you to tell him, fuck off. Because talking about your experience is something when, like, something, and talking about, like, the whole Middle East is something else. Like, it just frustrates me because we have enough American news. And I'm specifically talking about American news because I lived in the USA for 22 years. So American news, it's enough to display the Middle East as a dump and a shit and a war zone. And we've had enough of that. No, the Middle East is not all about war and a dump. We have good people, we have good cities, we have good countries. Yeah, you might have a different culture because, you know, it's a different religion, different food, different ethnic background, and all of that. But that doesn't make them bad. It's just different.
Yeah. Wow. I think your anger is totally justified. I think you're right. There's a lot of misinformation that gets passed around. I'm like cracking up at the fact that somebody like in good faith was like, "Hey, stay safe," not knowing that you are quite a bit away from like I'm sure the big conflict that they're referring to right now. Oh
Yeah,
God. Okay. I
yeah,
get it. It's in
exactly.
good faith.
No, like imagine if something bad happened in Mexico and you live in Canada. Like, yeah, it's the same continent, but it's far, far away. You wouldn't know about it unless somebody tells you about it in the news.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think the way that you're expressing your emotions here is so valid. I mean, when it's already bad enough when you have this misinformation being passed around in the media, and then you have someone like Mike Haddad who is presenting this whole other narrative that is just totally, maybe it's to give him the benefit of the doubt. Of course, he's speaking on his story, and you can't lie about your own story, is what he would say. But I think getting your own opinion out there, that in your view of the world, what he's saying is harmful. I mean, I don't think it's fair for him to say all these negative things. And he would say too, I remember we were talking about this before, but he would speak so negatively about being Middle Eastern, but then he would like flip flop and be like, I'm from Syria. I came here. I had to learn the language. There's no excuse. You were born here. You're lucky. You speak the language. If I can do it, there's no reason why you can't. So it's like, yes, on one hand, you're very, I don't, is the word ashamed okay to say? He seems ashamed to be Syrian, but then he's like, oh, but I am. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally definitely makes sense. And going back a bit to like my own family background. So my mom is a Christian from the Middle East, and my dad is a Muslim from the Middle East. So, and I have some family members from my mom's side, the Christian side, who have been living in the USA for like 40 plus years. And when I was in the USA, I was like connecting with them and like seeing them in family events and all of that. So when I would like see them in family gatherings, I would hear, obviously not all of them, but some family members would say something similar to what Michael Haddad was saying. And my explanation is because they are, yes, they are Middle Eastern, but they're living like they're Christians living in a majority dominantly Muslim country. So they feel like they are the minority. So when they go to America, quote unquote Christian country, majority Christian country, they feel home, kind of, because similar religion, not culture but religion. They get to have something similar, like where Christmas is celebrated versus a Muslim holiday as a national holiday.
Yeah.
So they get to relate on that, but they're faced with the reality that some of them don't speak English, so that's a barrier. Some of them don't look white. That's another barrier for some people who are racist. Some are like they have weird names. They don't have like Michael or Jackson or whatever. So some people would feel frustrated because hey, we're Christians, hey, we're like you, but then the American racist side is telling them, no, you're from the Muslim, you're just like the other, you're from the Middle East, you're just like the other people who like are crazy and weird, and I don't want to talk about them or talk to them. Like I guess blessed enough to have the side of my family because I get where Michael Haddad comes from and why he has of course this is just speculation, but from my experience I can relate to why he has this, I guess, double face in a way, because he's like, I'm Syrian, I get to do whatever I want because I am Syrian, and yet I come from a dump where chickens are running around, and like this is a shitty place, and I'm glad I'm not there anymore. So they literally have an identity crisis as a Christian Middle Eastern. And of course, not everybody is like this, but some of them literally do have a like an identity crisis. They're Christians, but they're not Americans. They're Christians, but they're from the Middle East. What do? So they have this like chaos in their mind, like, hey, what am I? So you see them the way you saw Michael Haddad. It's just a personality that doesn't make sense. And
Right.
I guess a chameleon in a way, because yeah, they basically switch the I'm a Middle Eastern whenever it's convenient for them.
Wow. Wow. But I get it though. I really do. Just I like as far as the way that you're explaining it, because there's this part, right, where you're saying that some similarities when he comes here, or when anybody could come here from a situation that you would explain, right, where they're Christians, like, oh, but we're Christians too. But there's enough of a difference that they could be still treated differently. Um, and I think that's very sad for sure. I definitely have a lot of empathy for people who come here from various different countries and are treated as other, even though we're the big old melting pot. Great American Melting Pot. Does anybody know? You guys know Schoolhouse Rock? Anyway,
You know, I
too, how
get
that
to
could
hear that.
be somebody like Mike who's coming here with this expectation that there's going to be a lot more acceptance that there isn't. And then I could see that that could create a lot of built up animosity. And sure, that's fair. I mean, if that's his experience, that's fantastic. He can have it. That's fine. But I don't feel like it's fair for him to push that onto other people because I feel like, in a way, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't that further the narrative that's being pushed by the media, the misinformation that anybody from Middle East equals bad?
Exactly. That's exactly why when I was like listening to his Emerald talk when it came out, I was so frustrated. I was very extremely frustrated because hey, I thought we're in this together. Like, hey, we're Middle Easterns. We're against basically the whole United States. We need to set the record straight, at least in public eyes, in public view. And I'm like, I'm speaking all these, I guess, extreme terms, and I obviously don't mean it in a mean way. Um, but yeah, basically, I want a Middle Eastern to say their story. That's fine. That's their experience. I'm not gonna judge them on their own personal experience. But you cannot say that the whole entire country and everybody like from that place is experiencing the same story as you are, because no, we have villages who are basically, yeah, dump, and like they have chickens running around, no paved roads, probably not even cars, probably in the whole entire village there's like only two cars from, like, I don't know, the 80s. And that's fine because in the village you focus on farming, not like materialistic things, like not a modern car. And like, yeah, even if you have school, it's gonna be like a class or two that gathers all the kids from like all different ages. And I get it, that's okay, I'm not complaining about that, but please don't come out in like a stage on worldwide where like literally thousands of people are listening to your audio. Probably, I believe that audio is still around, probably 3 years later. I believe it's still around. So whoever is a new IBO right now is listening to that audio right this second, probably. So and they have no idea what's going on in the Middle East besides what you hear on the news. So yeah, please say your experience. I'm totally fine with you speaking your experience and your story, but please set the record straight and say I lived in a village. Don't say I lived in Syria and this was my story. You can say I lived in a tiny village in Syria and this was my experience. Because I guarantee you, even though I'm not from Syria, I'm from a neighboring country called Iraq. But Syria has a big city, actually three major cities. It's Aleppo, and Damascus, and the other one is called Latakia. It's like a beautiful sea view and like mountains, and like it's literally a tourist destination in the Middle East because it's by the sea, and in the summer it's so beautiful. So please don't tell me you have chickens running around and telling people that's the whole country living like that.
Oh, yeah. And I remember when you were telling me about this initially, and I was looking at pictures and I was like, this place looks beautiful. Like, I can tell you that I've lived in some shitty places here in the US, and let me tell you, they were shitty. But that doesn't mean the entire United States is all like that one specific like road that I lived in or small town or whatever. And I was looking, I was like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. The architecture, like there's just so much to it that is so pretty. And the way that he spoke about it, if I hadn't looked that up, if I hadn't spoken to someone like you, if I wasn't open minded, I feel like any vulnerable person who's in worldwide who maybe already has some closed minded beliefs, and we know as a whole, worldwide is very closed minded. I could see them being like, ew, like I would never want to go to a country like that. But
Exactly.
but in all reality, that's a very, very small and it's the minority, not the majority of the country. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just add an extra info about my personal life. When I came to the United States for the first year, like 2 years and a half, I was in Mississippi. And for anybody that's been to the south of the USA, you know what Mississippi is. Then my family had a business opportunity to move to New Hampshire, and I felt like I was in a different country because of how different Mississippi from New Hampshire is. And then a year later, my mom had a different business opportunity and like a job opportunity. So we moved to Michigan. And that was a whole different thing. And then my mom passed away, and like I went through some shit, and I decided to move to Utah. And that was a completely different thing. So, 4 states in one country that I personally have experienced, and each one is different from the other. And I did not live in a village. I lived in Jackson, or sorry, Ridgeland, Mississippi. Ridgeland, Mississippi is like basically a big city in Mississippi. I lived in Hanover, New Hampshire. I lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I lived in Salt Lake City, Utah. So all big cities. You know, not some tiny village or like the outskirts of the city. No, like I lived in big cities in the USA, and they're all different. So can you imagine if you're living in the village versus a big city in another country? Of course, it's going to
Right.
be different.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'm really glad that you brought this up just because obviously I'm from the United States. And so I don't know that I just always felt so uncomfortable with the way that he was talking. I mean, not just the fact that he spoke about weird shit anyway, but it just makes you feel uncomfortable when he's like self-deprecating, but it's not just self-deprecating, it's deprecation on an entire culture. And I don't think that's fair. And I think that anybody who joins the organization who might be excited to hear, oh, Michael Haddad speaking, he's going to say something that I'm going to relate with so much because we are within the same culture, maybe we're from the same country, maybe we're from the same region. And then they hear him talking. I could imagine somebody who's young too. Maybe they're also newer to the US. Maybe they were raised here. Either way, I feel like anybody who listens to that who's already like feeling uncomfortable, I don't want people to like feel like they have to question their own culture and be like, well, if Michael Haddad is this quote millionaire, which obviously he's not, allegedly, I don't think he is. Um, if he says something, if he says that's bad, I could just see somebody who's already vulnerable being like, well, is something wrong with me? Which also I feel like is a huge thing that Worldwide does as a whole as well, is they're preaching Christianity, but there's no diversity and openness for other religions. In fact, we had Taz on here who is Muslim, and she said that she was like very much open to learning, but she was pressured in a way to convert. She never did. But the fact that anybody was ever felt like any sort of pressure to convert to a different religion because that's what the majority is, that's frustrating.
I definitely was pressured to convert too. And I almost did, but then I walked away altogether. So yeah, I can definitely agree with that.
I love the different perspective that we get here. You guys, we have gone over some lawsuits. That's not even all of the lawsuits, you guys. That's just like less than a handful. There are so many. Then we had an opportunity, of course, to talk about the one and only Michael Haddad. I don't like him because of what he did to me and my kid, okay? I don't like that guy. But not only that, we're getting this unique perspective of hearing what it was like to leave, but really truly see what was going on that they tried to gaslight us into thinking didn't actually happen. So thank you so much, Callie. We're at about an hour here. To wrap things up, what are some words that you have for our listeners just to leave them on a good note?
To leave them on a good note, I'd
Or on a
say
negative
that
note,
if
whatever you have to say.
that's okay. No, I'd rather leave people on a good note because I was screaming for the last hour, and I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. We do it. We
I
all do
get
it here.
very I get very passionate when it comes to my culture because yeah, I've told you that my mom is American from like because of my grandma who my grandfather left the Middle East in 1959 and he married my American grandma, and that's where I'm part American, but my whole life and like I was born in the Middle East, so that's the side I connect with more than the American side, and it's just that's what I sorry, that's where I identify with as a Middle Eastern American. But yeah, as a happy note, I would say that if you're still in, please, 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 and please check Dr. Dr. Romani. She is a legitimate doctor, a psychiatrist, or a therapist. But she's definitely like a legitimate doctor who has a YouTube channel, and she's been on so many different podcasts talking about narcissism and all the different, um, like, I guess, not phases, but like all the different signs of narcissism and how to detect one. Because I can 99.9% guarantee you that your upline, if they're successful, quote unquote successful, they're probably a narcissist. Because the whole manipulation and like sales tactics and like love bombing and all of that, if you're a sane human being, you're gonna learn how to do it, yes, but it's gonna eat at you, and at some point you're gonna be miserable and end up quitting. um and if they are just quote unquote successful and they haven't quit and they are like moving up the pins, whether they're like the birds or like the gemstones or like the precious metals, if they constantly keep moving and keep recognizing, like being recognized by their upline, 99.9% of a chance that that person that's coaching you and like doing life with you is a narcissist. So please educate yourself about what narcissism is and get out. That's if you're still in. If you're still out, then you already did it. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be hard, um, especially if you're fresh. And these podcasts do help. And I would encourage you to talk to somebody. You don't have to come out on a podcast. And if you decide, that's great, because we need to hear your story. You can come out and talk about your experience anonymously, like I am doing, because the point is to share the experience, not be famous. At least that's for me. If you want to be famous, that's a different story. You can. Um, but yeah, I want to leave you on a happy note. Congratulations for being out, and if you're still in, congratulations on turning on a podcast. That's not allowed. That's not like approved by your upline. Congratulations. That's already a huge step for you. So congratulations. And that's
I love
what I
that.
have to say.
Well, thank you so much. I am so grateful that we had an opportunity to speak with you again. I'm sure this will not be the last time we hear from you. If you guys would like to be like Callie and you guys would like to come and share your story, please DM me at xsandt.podcast, or please email me DANI at xsandtpodcast.com. You guys can catch me on Spotify, YouTube, anywhere else that podcasts are heard. We'll catch you guys in the next episode.